Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into something I think a lot of you are going to have some strong opinions about.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's one of those things, uh, everyone's got their favorites and their not so favorites.
Right.
We're looking at a list from the top10s.com,
Oh, interesting.
ranging what users consider the most overrated American sitcoms.
Okay, yeah, there are gonna be some hot takes in there, I bet.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's all subjective, right?
Absolutely.
What one person finds overrated, another might think is the best show ever.
Totally.
And that's what makes this so interesting to me, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we're not here to, bash anyone's favorites or anything. We're just here to kind of like dig into the why.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about a sitcom that might lead people to label it as overrated?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the writing, the characters, the premise, or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, it's like we're dissecting popular opinion here
Right.
and trying to figure out, what makes a sitcom tick or not tick for certain people.
Exactly. So, okay, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
At the very top of this list, we have a show that's pretty much like the definition of a sitcom. Like, I think if you ask someone to name a sitcom, this would be one of the first ones they say,
I can imagine.
Friends.
Ah, Friends, of course, yeah. That makes sense. It's so iconic.
Right. Like, everyone knows the theme song, everyone knows the orange couch.
Exactly.
But it's interesting, though,
Yeah.
to see it at the top of a list for overrated shows
Mm.
because it's still so popular. Like, people still watch it all the time.
Yeah, people love Friends.
One of the comments, though, that I thought was really interesting,
Oh, tell me.
someone pointed out that it's always on repeat,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
like, especially on Nick at Night.
Like, you can't escape it.
Yeah, so do you think that overexposure could actually, like, make people think it's overrated?
I think that's totally possible.
Okay.
Like, think about, when you hear a song too many times,
Ugh, it gets so annoying.
it gets old,
Yeah.
right? And maybe the same thing can happen with a sitcom. Like, you see the same jokes,
Mm-hmm.
the same characters, the same storylines over and over again, and you just kind of you know,
Get tired of it?
yeah, you get tired of it.
Even if you liked it at first.
Exactly.
So maybe Friends is just like a victim of its own success.
It's possible.
Like, it was so popular that now it's everywhere.
And it loses that,
the specialness.
yeah, that special something.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one on the list.
All right, I'm ready.
This one's a bit of a throwback to, like, the Nickelodeon days.
Oh, okay.
Drake and Josh.
Oh, yeah, I remember Drake and Josh.
Slapstick humor, the whole bit.
Chili.
And one of the comments about this one pointed out that both Drake Bell and Josh Peck
Uh-huh.
were both in The Amanda Show previously,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were.
which was another Nickelodeon show.
Yeah, very popular.
And it made me wonder, like, do you think that that previous exposure might
Oh.
influence how people see Drake and Josh?
Oh, that's a great point. I think it definitely could. Like,
Oh.
maybe you loved them on The Amanda Show so much that you just automatically, Drake and Josh, even if it's not as good.
Yeah, like maybe you're looking at it through rose-colored glasses.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that nostalgia
The
factor.
power of nostalgia.
Yeah, it can really influence how we see things.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Okay, so we got overexposure, we've got nostalgia.
Hmm.
And now this next one is interesting because it sparked a debate in the comments.
Oh, really? Let's hear it.
Okay, so the list includes Family Guy,
Okay.
but the person who commented insists that it's not a sitcom
Oh, why is that?
because it's animated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it made me think, like,
It's a tricky one.
where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Right? Because Family Guy is definitely comedic.
Oh, absolutely. It's full of jokes,
Right.
satire, crazy characters.
So, like, technically speaking, is it a sitcom or not?
Well, traditionally, a sitcom is a live-action show,
Okay.
usually filmed in front of a live audience, or at least with a laugh track.
Right, like The Big Bang Theory.
Exactly. The Big Bang Theory, Seinfeld, all those classics.
Yeah.
So Family Guy, even though it's funny, it's animated. So,
So it wasn't quite fit the definition.
not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
But it does raise a big question. Like, do the lines between genres get a little blurry as TV changes? Like,
Right.
could an animated show still be a sitcom in a way?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Definitely.
So we've already got some interesting stuff just from the top 3 entries on this list.
Yeah, this is great.
Are you ready to keep going?
Oh, I'm just getting started.
All right, let's do it. We've got a whole bunch more shows to talk about, and I think some of them might surprise you.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, let's start with a show that was super popular with younger audiences, iCarly.
iCarly. Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
So one thing that's interesting about this one
Yeah.
is that it, along with a few other shows on this list, were all created by the same person,
Oh, really? Who's that?
Dan Schneider.
Oh, wow.
So he also did Victorious and Sam and Cat.
Yeah, I see those on the list, too.
And it seems like his shows are especially divisive.
Interesting. Like people either love them or hate them?
Yeah, like he has a very specific style
Oh, yeah, definitely. Lots of energy, slapstick
and
humor.
kind of like wacky situations.
Yeah,
And I can see
exactly.
how that would work really well for some people.
For sure, especially kids. Like they
Yeah.
love that kind of stuff.
But maybe for other people, it's just a little too much.
Yeah, could be too much.
So maybe the overrated label is kind of like a matter of age and personal taste.
Yeah, totally. What's funny to one person might be annoying to another.
Like what might be hilarious to a 12-year-old might not do it for someone in their 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Humor changes as you get older.
It's true.
And also, it's worth noting that overrated doesn't always equal bad.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Like a show can be well made and entertaining even if some people think it's overhyped.
Right, it's all about perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got age, we've got taste, and now this next one is definitely one that pushes the boundaries a bit.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. It's Always Sunny. Now, that's a show that doesn't hold back.
No, it does not.
It's dark, cynical,
The characters are questionable at best.
to say the least.
Yeah, so do you think that that cynicism is part of why it ends up on the overrated list?
I think it could be.
Okay.
Like, it's definitely not your typical feel-good sitcom.
Right, it's not Full House.
No, definitely not.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, it's like embracing the worst parts of humanity.
Yeah, and finding humor in it.
Exactly. And some people love that.
Yeah.
But others are like, nope, that's too much for me.
It's too dark.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to taste.
Totally.
Like what one person finds hilarious, another person might find offensive or just not funny at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we've got age, we've got taste, we've got tolerance for cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's look at a show that was a critical darling, but might not resonate as much with younger audiences today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Frasier.
Frasier. Ah, yes, that's a classic. Very witty, sophisticated humor.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It might not be everyone's cup of tea these days.
And I was a little surprised to see it on this list.
Yeah.
But it does make you think about, like, how time can change how we see a show.
Right.
Frasier was huge when it was on.
Oh, yeah. It won tons of awards.
People loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe the kind of humor that was popular in the 90s and early 2000s
Yeah.
just doesn't land the same way now.
It's true. Humor evolves over time.
It does,
Like what was funny back then might seem kind of dated now.
right?
And plus, Frasier was a spin-off
Oh, yeah,
of Cheers. So it already had these big shoes to fill.
that's true. Like, it's always going to be compared to the original.
Exactly. And that can be tough.
Yeah, no matter how good it is, it's always going to be in the shadow of the original.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got overexposure, nostalgia, generational humor, the challenges of being a spinoff.
This is fascinating.
And now let's dive into a show that used a really unique format that's not for everyone.
Oh, okay. I'm curious.
Modern Family.
Modern Family. Okay, yeah, that was a big one.
Right.
With the whole mockumentary style.
Yeah, like the shaky camera, the characters talking to the
Yeah,
audience.
very distinct.
And it worked really well for them.
It did. It created this like sense of intimacy almost.
Yeah, like you're right there with them.
Exactly.
But I can totally see how that wouldn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it can be a little distracting.
Like it takes you out of the moment.
Yeah, like you're constantly reminded that you're watching a TV show.
Right. It's like they're winking at you the whole time.
Exactly. And that can be fun sometimes, but sometimes it's like,
Too much.
yeah,
So I think with Modern Family, the whole mockumentary style could definitely be a reason why some people find it overrated.
makes sense.
It's just not everyone's cup of tea.
It's a stylistic choice that could be divisive.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have
From overexposure to nostalgia
the documentaries.
to spin-offs, all sorts of stuff.
I'm loving this.
But we're just getting started.
Oh, there's more.
There's a lot more.
I'm ready.
We've got a whole bunch of other shows on this list to dissect, and trust me, some of them might surprise you.
Can't wait.
So stick with us.
All right.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
It's amazing how these sitcoms can really get people talking, right?
Yeah, it's like everyone has such strong opinions about them.
Like you were saying before, it really shows you how much personal taste matters.
Totally. And like how the time period a show was made in can affect how people see it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Speaking of which, let's talk about The Cosby Show.
Oh, The Cosby Show. Yeah, that was a big one.
It was huge in the 80s.
It was groundbreaking, really.
Yeah, like it showed a black family in a way that TV hadn't really seen before.
Exactly. It was a really important show for representation.
But of course now it's hard to talk about The Cosby Show without talking about...
Yeah, the controversies surrounding Bill Cosby.
Right, and it makes you think like...
It's tough because the show itself was so important.
Yeah.
But can you separate the art from the artist?
It's a tough question.
It really is.
It's like the show's legacy is forever changed by what happened.
Yeah, it's a reminder that these things can happen.
That our perceptions of a show can change so much over time.
For reasons that have nothing to do with the show itself sometimes.
Exactly.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. Okay, so let's move on to another show that's definitely sparked a lot of debate.
All right, hit me with it.
The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, The Big Bang Theory. Okay.
It was on for like a decade.
Yeah, it was super popular.
But it also got a lot of criticism.
Yeah, it was kind of a love it or hate it kind of.
So what do you think it was about the Big Bang Theory that made people have such strong feelings?
Well, I think it had to do with the way it portrayed geek culture. Like, on the one hand, it was celebrating this world of comic books and video games and all that.
Right, which was becoming more mainstream at the time.
Exactly.
But some people felt like it was relying on stereotypes about nerds and geeks.
Yeah, like making fun of them instead of celebrating them.
And that the humor could be kind of mean-spirited.
Yeah, it's a fine line between poking fun and being offensive.
It is.
And I think the Big Bang Theory sometimes crossed that line.
So it all comes down to how you interpret the humor.
Totally what one person finds funny, another person might find hurtful.
Right, and it's important to be aware of that.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about shows that have been affected by off-screen events.
Like The Cosby Show?
Yeah, and shows that walk a fine line when they're humor.
Like The Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, now let's talk about a show that was really unique.
Oh, okay.
Like, it had this cult following, but it's also kind of hard to get into.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah, Arrested Development. That show was so weird.
It was so weird.
But in like a good way.
In a brilliant way. Like, it was so clever and layered.
Yeah, it was definitely not a show you could just have on in the background.
No, you had to have
And there
it.
were so many jokes and running gags.
And the plot was so intricate.
Yeah, it was like a puzzle.
Exactly. And I think that's why it ended up on this overrated list.
Okay.
Because some people just didn't get it.
Yeah, it was definitely not for everyone.
But the people who loved it really loved it.
Yeah, it was like a secret club.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess the lesson here is that it's okay for a show to not be for everyone.
Totally. Some of the best shows are the ones that are a little bit niche.
That dare to be different.
Exactly. They don't try to please everybody.
And Arrested Development definitely did its own thing.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so now
Yeah.
let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a show that was really driven by its star's performance.
Okay, who are we talking about?
The Nanny.
Oh, The Nanny with Fran Drescher.
Yeah, her voice, her delivery, it was so iconic.
I was like, nobody else could have played that role.
Exactly. And the show was so funny.
So over the top.
But that was part of the charm. Like,
Yeah.
it was just pure fun.
Yeah, but do you think that kind of humor might not work for everyone?
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
it was very broad, very physical.
Yeah, and it definitely played up some stereotypes.
Yeah, so I can see how some people might find it a little grating or outdated.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's another example of how humor changes over time.
Right. What was funny 20 years ago might not be funny now.
It's true. Okay, so we've got a show that's driven by a unique performance.
The Nanny.
Yeah, and now let's look at a show that was groundbreaking for its representation.
Oh, okay. This is an important one.
Will and Grace.
Will and Grace. Yeah, that was a huge step forward for LGBTQ representation on TV.
It was like one of the first shows to really show gay characters in a mainstream way.
Yeah, and it did it in a way that was both funny and heartwarming.
Yeah, like it normalized these relationships in a way that hadn't really been done before. But even with all the good that it did,
Yeah.
it wasn't without its critics.
Right. Some people felt like it still relied on some stereotypes about gay men.
Yeah, and that it didn't always represent the full range of LGBTQ experiences.
Which is a valid criticism.
It is. It's a reminder that even shows that do good things
Yeah,
can still be flawed.
exactly. And that representation is a journey, not a destination.
Right? We're always learning and growing.
Okay, so we've got a show that pushed boundaries with representation.
Will and Grace.
Yeah, and now let's talk about a show that pushes boundaries in a completely different way.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
South Park, oh boy.
That show does not hold back.
No, it does not. It's offensive. It's crude.
But it's also really smart. Like, it uses satire to make these really sharp points about society and politics.
And pop culture.
And it's been doing for years.
It's amazing how they manage to stay relevant.
I know. It's like they always know what buttons to push.
So do you think that's why it ends up on this list?
The button pushing. Yeah, like, is it just too offensive for some people?
I think that's definitely part of it.
Okay.
But I also think it's because South Park makes you think.
Yeah.
Like, it challenges your beliefs.
It make you uncomfortable sometimes.
Exactly. And not everyone wants that from their comedy.
Some people just want to laugh and not think too hard.
Yeah. And that's totally fine.
Right. It's all about what you're looking for in a show.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part.
We have.
We've talked about shows that have been affected by controversy.
Shows that walk a fine line with their humor.
Shows that are super clever and complex.
Shows that are driven by their stars' performance.
Shows that push boundaries with representation.
And shows that just love to offend.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and we're not done yet.
There's more.
There's a few more shows on this list that we need to talk about.
All right, bring it on.
And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts on all of this.
I can't wait.
So stick with us. We'll be right back. And we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into sitcoms that some viewers just love to label as overrated.
It's really interesting to see how many different factors can influence our perceptions of these shows.
It's not just about whether a show is funny or not.
Right. It's about the cultural context, the time period, the style of humor, all sorts of things.
And of course, personal taste plays a huge role.
Absolutely. Like what one person finds hilarious, another person might find totally cringeworthy.
Exactly. So let's keep all of that in mind as we look at a few more shows from this list, starting with one that focused on a demographic that doesn't always get a lot of attention in sitcoms.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
Grace and Frankie.
Oh, Grace and Frankie. Yeah, that was a good one.
It was about these two women who find out their husbands are in love with each other.
Yeah, and they end up becoming friends and starting a business together.
Right. It was really funny, but also kind of heartwarming.
Definitely. And it was great to see a show that focused on older characters.
Yeah, like they were dealing with issues that people in their 70s and 80s actually face.
Exactly. It was refreshing to see that kind of representation.
But I could see why it might not have appealed to everyone.
Yeah, like it was definitely a slower paced show.
Yeah, it wasn't all about the jokes.
More about the characters and their relationships.
Right, so if you're looking for a fast-paced, laugh-a-minute kind of sitcom.
Yeah, Grace and Frankie probably wasn't for you.
But if you wanted something a little more thoughtful, a little more character-driven.
Then it was perfect.
Okay, so we've got a show that embraces a slower pace. And now let's jump to a show that went in the completely opposite direction.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Goldbergs.
The Goldbergs. Okay, yeah, I remember that one.
It was all about this family in the 80s.
Yeah, lots of nostalgia, big hair, loud clothes.
And a killer soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I feel like the humor was very specific.
Yeah, like if you didn't grow up in the 80s,
Mhm.
that some of the jokes might have gone over your head.
Or just not been that funny.
Exactly. Like it was very much a show for people who lived through that era.
And could relate to all the references.
Yeah, it was all about that nostalgia factor.
Which can be great if you're the target audience.
Totally. But if not, it might have felt a little forced.
Okay, so we've got a show that embraces nostalgia, and now let's wrap up our deep dive with a show that was known for its sharp wit and meta humor.
Oh, okay, this should be interesting.
30 Rock.
30 Rock, yeah, that was a clever one.
So clever.
Like you had to be paying attention to get all the jokes.
Yeah, they were throwing references left and right.
And breaking the fourth wall all the time.
It was like a show for people who love TV.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was making fun of the whole industry.
Which was hilarious if you were in on the joke.
But if you weren't,
It probably just seemed confusing.
yeah, or just not funny.
So it's another example of how humor can be very niche.
Totally. Like what works for one person might not work for another.
And that's okay.
Exactly. There's no one size fits all when it comes to comedy.
And I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah, I agree.
We've talked about so many different sitcoms today.
From the classics to the more obscure ones.
And we've seen how so many different factors can influence whether someone thinks a show is overrated or not.
It's all about perspective and personal taste.
And the cultural moment a show is made in.
Exactly. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
the most important thing is to just enjoy what you enjoy.
Right, like don't let anyone tell you what you should or shouldn't find funny.
Exactly. If you love a show that someone else thinks is overrated.
Who cares?
Exactly. Just embrace it.
So that's it for our deep dive into the world of overrated sitcoms.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something along the way.
And who knows, maybe you even discovered a new show to check out.
Or a new reason to love a show you already love.
Exactly. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.